All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue with our next speaker. The topic of the next speaker is Business by Design. Rania Svoronou. Rania moved 3 months ago as an Associate Design Director in the NYC Design Studio from the IBM Interactive Experience London studio. She is an active speaker, guest lecturer, industry mentor at some of the world's best universities and has been invited to judge and mentor at multiple hackathons and design events all across Europe. Rania has won multiple awards recognizing her as one of the best in digital and tech in the UK. She made it to the top 100 women in Tech UK 2018 and also got on the drum list Top 50 Under 30 2018, showcasing the highest achieving women making their mark in digital. She will speak about what it takes to create a culture in which design can mature. Please welcome Associate Design Director at IBM iX, Rania Svoronou. ขอเสียงปรบมือให้เธอด้วยครับ
Welcome. Thank you for having me here. I'm very, very excited. It's my first time in Bangkok. So I'm here to talk to you about business by design, right? My name is Rania, and I'm an Associate Design Director at IBM iX, based in New York. iX, called Interactive Experience, is the new division within IBM, new meaning 5 years in a company of 100 years old, where we combine creativity, strategy, and design. And before that, I was based in London actually for 4 years. So quickly, I would just like to tell you a bit of my background and why I'm here today. So I'm originally Greek. I was born and raised in Athens, in Greece. And I'm one of those stories that from a very young age, I started drawing, and I knew I wanted to design since I was 15. So that's a way of life for me. And then I moved to North England, where I studied. That was a cultural shock. And then in London, where I worked and studied as well and combined design and technology. And 5 months ago, I decided to take the big step and move in the States, in New York, which is a completely different experience. So, good design is good business. First of all, how many of you have heard of seeing that quote before? Great, I've seen a few hands. So that's one of my favorite quotes even before I joined IBM. This phrase was coined back in 1973 by our second visionary CEO, Thomas J. Watson Jr., and is more relevant than ever today. So design and business have a long history together. It goes back for decades. So I want to talk a little bit about this. So I don't know how many of you knew that actually, but IBM was the world's first company to establish a corporate-wide design program, and that was back in 1956. And it was pioneering back in the days to do that. So Elliot Noyes was an American architect and product designer, and he was the first head of design at IBM. And what he did, his vision, the goal, was to create consistency, not just the look and feel, not just the visual or the marketing side, which is a given today, but how do you change the operations, the management, the culture of a company, right? To the buildings, to the logos, and everything else. So he worked with some of the biggest design legends in the world, such as Paul Rand, Charles and Ray Eames, to create what was considered back then the world's first design program on that scale. And again, it was more around the culture. It's actually doing the business by design back in the 50s, and what we call now digital transformation, business transformation, which I'm going to talk more about it. Because to be honest, it's about cultural transformation and people transformation. So why again today? Why we're putting, all the focus on design and the experience and design thinking? It's becoming a buzzword, but it's something that it really can make a difference. It can be your brand differentiator. So the reason is because we're living in a very complex world, right? It's increasingly challenging. The technology landscape is changing. We're having social media, we're having cloud, we're having mobile, analytics, right? And I'm going to give you just a quick example. So I flew from New York to Bangkok via Dubai. That was 25 hours flight. And I think I had over like 7 different mobile interactions with 7 different mobile applications. You know, ordering my taxi in New York, then checking in my flight, connecting with my Wi-Fi in the airplane, and then landing in Bangkok, learning how to get a taxi here, which is a completely new experience. So what I'm trying to say, going back to the omni-channel experience, we're living in a connected ecosystem, right? And the experience between those channels, we're trying to make it as seamless as possible, and that's very tricky to do. And that's why being human is the most important part of the experience today. You're going to hear a lot of times the word experience, right? What do we mean by that? So the definition of experience, right, is when we actually acquire knowledge or we're exposed to an event. That's how we gain experience. So people today, humans, we are loyal to experiences, not brands anymore. Yes, brands create the experiences, but we're going to remember an experience. I remember the experience, for example, of my flight from New York to Bangkok. So always remember, you're delivering an experience. So based on the experience, right, what we did back in 2000, we did it back in the 50s, and we did it again in 2012. This is our CEO, Jeannie Rometty, and her vision is to create a sustainable culture of design and design thinking. And because the experience, the client experience, is going to actually be the differentiator in the next decades. But how do you do that, right? How do you start a digital transformation or a business transformation? Where do you start? Well, you start, at least we started, by hiring a great business leader that has knowledge and appreciation of design. This is Phil Gilbert. This is a general manager of IBM Design, right? And one of the first things he actually said in the board was that we need more designers. You know, when you look at the ratio of your businesses, like how many designers you got in a team or in a company. So the first thing to do was hire hundreds of designers. And that's what we did. So our design strategy is to drive a cultural embrace of design thinking as a practice that places focus on user experience and cross-discipline collaboration in order to deliver client experiences. In long story short, put the human experience back on the table, actually. Put at the top of it, right? That's going to be the most important thing, customer experience. And how we did that? Well, we call the 3 pillars of a design practice: people, places, and practices. So business care about outcomes, right? It would be great to say they care about design, but the reality is they care about outcomes. How do you bring those outcomes? So by focusing on people, places, and practices, that's what we did. I'm going to elaborate more on that. So people, hire the best design talents out there. There's a lot of them, right? So we hired 1,500 designers in the past couple of years. Create a very strong design leadership and have sponsorship, you know, support those teams, those people. And I can say that I'm a prime example of this story I'm sharing right now, because I've been hired by IBM iX in the London studio like 4 years ago. And I remember when they hired me, they told me it's going to be very challenging because we're going through our own business by design transformation. And I can definitely say that it's been a very challenging but a very rewarding road. See that, you know, being part of this journey. So people, number 1, always focus on people. 2, places. These are just some images from the studios we have around the world. We have 57 actually studios around the world. And I mean, you need to create spaces, you want to create spaces that will drive innovation, collaboration. I'm not saying that, you know, adding some fancy furniture or colors are going to do the work for you. They're not. You know, it's great to have a ping pong table, but it's not going to do the work for you. But, you know, you want to create those places that will drive that collaboration. And any great product or service out there usually resembles a great team. And great teams is usually people liking each other, to be very honest. So places is really important. Invest on a space. And then, okay, we got the people, we got the places. What do we get them to do? Create a very strong framework around what do you want them to achieve. So we have our own enterprise design thinking framework, which derives from the basic principles of design thinking. Our differentiator, I'm not going to do a deep dive now, but our key differentiators is basically the scale and the complexity we're dealing with. Then agile, working agile, right? Train your teams to be fast. It's really important, especially nowadays. And then DevOps. So actually you have design thinking, agile, and DevOps working together. Sorry. So I'd like to do a quick exercise with you. It's going to become a bit interactive. I'm a designer, I'm a visual person. So I'd like you to take a couple of seconds, maybe a minute is too much, and I want you to picture a flower vase. You can close your eyes if you want, but I want you to think of a flower vase. You can think of the shape, the size, the color, whatever you want. I just want you to really think of a flower vase. Okay, I'll give you a couple of seconds for that. Great. So now, I would like you to forget what you just have in your mind, and I'd like you to think of a better way for people to enjoy flowers at home. You see where I'm going with this? How do you really enjoy flowers at home? I want you to think about it. I want you to put some emotion on this, you know? Would you really love to enjoy flowers at home? What would be your optimum experience? I really want you to think about that for a bit. Okay. So I would assume that on the first ask I gave you, you would have something like this on your mind. You know, maybe you thought, yeah, I see some smiles. Maybe you thought, you know, the size, as I said, the shape, maybe the type of flowers, if there's water in it or not, right? Great. I asked you to think of a flower vase, and that's what you did. So on the second ask, right, I ask you to think how you enjoy flowers at home. You know, I ask you to put yourselves out there and really think about the experience and put some emotion, because the experience is about emotions, and we are emotional creatures. So I bet, I think we're around 200 people in here, I bet if we were to share ideas and insights right now, we'd have probably 2 different ideas on the second ask. So in a nutshell, this is design thinking. It's shifting your mindset from being product focused to experience focused. And the second ask is usually trickier to do. It takes more time, you know, it doesn't just take logic. So on the first ask, I just asked you to think of a product. On the second ask, it was the experience. So that mind shift is really where the differentiator happens, is really how you can create the digital transformation we're talking about and doing business by design, right? It just takes more time. So to embrace design thinking is to recognize that the simple problems have already been solved. And what do I mean by that? The point here is not to create, let's say, a vase, put a smart sensor that reads the temperature of the water, let's say, call it smart vase, how many there are out there, and then, you know, you're innovative. That's not the point here. It's actually completely redefining the idea of an experience. Do we need a vase on the first place on this ask? So it's completely rethinking the full experience. So design is the intent behind an outcome, right? That's the definition. And if design is the intent behind an outcome, then design thinking is forming intent by developing empathy for our users. Empathy here is the key word, right? And that sometimes needs more time. You know, we need to invest in that. It doesn't happen overnight, but empathy is the key thing here. Empathy is the key thing for design thinking, and eventually doing business by design. So at this point, I'd like to share an example of how we did that. I'm not going to go down to a tone of study cases, but it's one project of how we did our business by design for a client of ours. That was for a fuel client, and that project is very personal to me because I've been part of their digital transformation for the past 2 years. So first thing is recognizing, of course, that the customer experience is a brand differentiator. And if you look at other industry leaders, like in retail or sportswear or other industries, you'll see that the ones that are really leading the way are putting experience at the forefront. So it's absorbing that information and see, okay, what do they do best? So what we did by doing business by design for this client was redefining all the customer journeys. That's how we started. Okay, let's go back and scratch and talk with the users. How do they find about your brand? How do they give feedback? How do they complain? How do they feel engaged? All those questions that could never be filled through a spreadsheet, right? So, and that's what we did, and that was actually part of the for a gas station retail digital transformation, and that's what we did. So for example, I don't know how many of you are driving here, the experience of going in a gas station and filling up your car at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, let's say, before work, you just want to get the job done, right? And that's a completely different customer journey than, let's say, if it's in a Friday evening, you're going back from work, and you might want to grab some snacks before you go back home. So the end goal is the same, but the experience is completely different. So it's revisiting those journeys. And design thinking, we use design thinking to really surface those insights and become really user-centric. And long story short, I'm not going to disclose any numbers. The results were tremendous. Their customer engagement increased. They were mentioned positively on social media. They knew better than ever who their customer was. And it became their main B2C platform to engage with their customers. And it didn't happen easily. Fusing design thinking and infusing agile in a silo software company that did waterfall, for the past 20, 30 years is not an easy task to do, and it doesn't happen overnight. Business transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes time and the right people. So design thinking works, right? And good design thinking is good business, what leads me to say. So there was a report from the world's largest technological profession of why software fails, right? And they estimated that there is around $1 trillion spent on IT projects every year. And out of the top 12 reasons of why an IT project fails, 3 were user-centric related, such as badly refined requirements, stakeholder politics, and poor communication between the customer and the development and the design team. So it's really, really important to put focus. So we talked about design thinking, right? I started the story with you. But what can you do? So it doesn't matter if you're a company, a startup company of 3 people, or if you're a small-sized company, or if you're a global corporation, right? There are 3 things that you can really start doing. So, number 1, focus on your user outcomes. Easier said than done. You know how many times I've had people or clients come to me like, but we know our users. Usually you don't. Do your research. Really focus on that. 2, build multidisciplinary teams. I'm a Greek who studied in North England, then lived in London, now lives in New York, and I'm here in Bangkok sharing that story with you. We are global. There are no excuse of not having diverse teams, right? And your products should be as diverse as possible. And 3, restless iteration. The world is restless, so your products and services should be restless too. What we're doing, for example, now from our side is now fusing design thinking into artificial intelligence. So you've heard a lot of things today, right? It's been a long day. I'm sure you've heard a lot of things yesterday. You're going to hear more things the next few days. If there's one thing that I would really like you to remember from the past 20, 25 minutes, is that design matters, And if you really want to create change, hire a great leader, business leader that knows and appreciates design. And then put designers on the table. Build a strong design leadership. Bring the experts in if you don't know how to do it yourselves. Thank you very much.